Okay, this is one of the tapes of Kerri Marquadt sent. Tom Bauman, KRAE, Radio, Cheyenne, interview with Jim Mather, Mr. Steak, Side 1, Tuesday, March 23rd, 1982.
I just finished doing all the credentials on Mr. Jim Mather.
Try that again.
Well, I've just finished doing all the credentials on Mr. Jim Mather, but I can assure you that one of the outstanding men that I have had a chance to meet anywhere is the gentleman who is the founder, president of the board, and I think friend of Mr. Steak. You know, that's something I think is very important. But Jim Mather, 285 scattered all throughout the entire United States, and certainly all the credit to the name. And I believe that there's so much of your personal philosophy involved in the Mr. Steak operation that to you, I think, would be one of the things that it's a projection of the way you think and feel that America should be, and the type of business that you would like to say you are a part of. Jim, if you will, sir, tell us a little something about you and some of your basic philosophy. I've enjoyed talking with you here. I almost feel like you were interviewing me instead of me interviewing you, though, sir.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. You're asking me to explain a little bit about myself, and maybe that's difficult. I would say this. We have been in our company using what is called a personal dynamic profile, which is a kind of revolutionary method of evaluating management style and thinking within our entire staff. And also in our management, Dave, I'm sitting here with Dave Straub, our local investor manager of the Mr. Steak in Cheyenne. Have you taken that PDP evaluation yet? You don't remember taking that? Well, it's an interesting little card in that it's on two sides. There's 30 words on each side, and I think it's 5 different areas that you would mark as to where you think you fit based upon your own personality as it has to do with that particular adjective. Then you flip a card over, and there are 30 more adjectives, Tom, and this way, on this side of the card, you're now seeing mark it in one of those 5 as to how you think others expect you to act in regard to each one of these adjectives. And that sounds too simple, but you end up with a profile, and there are generally 2 different profiles. One is your basic profile, that which you think of yourself, and then there's a one where you think of what others expect you to be. And then they say the difference between those, and on this is put out in a graph form. Then it shows the difference between the graphs, and on each one of those points, the stress in our lives is the difference between those 2 points in each case. And it's very, very interesting because it ends up with about a basic 22 different personalities, management style personalities, and everybody has a management style personality. And there's no such a thing as one being good and one being bad. There's one that you'll find, for instance, in our company, we have our auditor and our vice president, treasurer, and his case, he has a profile that is classical for his particular job and his business. And if he had one that matched mine, he would be in the wrong business for himself. And the same thing would be true in our marketing department, our operation department. There's all these different styles of management, and there's no one thing that's supposed to be better than another. Gave it to my wife, and when I before I would allow it to be used in our company, I wanted to go through the training, the same as I did with Carnegie. I wanted to go through the training to become an evaluator myself to find out whether I think it's really for real. And in doing that, it came to this one personality, and they said, get some training on this, and do one overnight here, and bring it back, and we'll evaluate it tomorrow in the class. So that night, the only person I had to talk to was my wife. And I thought in terms of those 21 personalities. So I said, now, which one would Dottie fit into? And I found one that it fit into. And as the description on that one, it says, this personality says that if you try to get them to fill out this evaluation form, they will say, I don't want to take your test. We said, well, wait a minute, I didn't say it was a test. It's not a test. I'd just like for you to fill this out based upon where you think you fit in this. He said, I don't care what you call it. It's a test. I don't want to take your test. And so I got home that night and I said, Dottie, I've got to go through this exercise so that I can make this evaluation tomorrow. And I wonder if you would help me by completing, where you feel you stand in each one of these words. She says, Jim, I don't want to take your test. I didn't call it a test. It's not a test. She said, I don't care what you call it. It's still a test. And you may come up and say, I'm dumb. Or something like that. I said, no, honey, it isn't. But the point is, she fit. It just happened that I found the profile that was hers coming out. And hers is perfect to live with me, to match my personality. It's a result of why we've been married for 36 years without an argument. And psychologists say that's not normal. And say maybe it isn't, but that's the truth. We've never had an argument. But it's because of her personality. She knows when to keep quiet, and she knows what she needs to do with me, and hopefully I know what to do with her. Well, the interesting part about it, and it's a long story, Tom, to tell you that we then took this into the field in in a survey of 1,500 of our guests in 10 different locations throughout the United States. And if you'll know that 1,500 people, that's about what they use for the national Harris poll and some of the others, that this is an overkill for any kind of a survey. And what we're trying to do is find out, do our guests fit a particular management style? Do they fit in a particular style? And the interesting part about it is that, you know what one? Mine is referred to as a velvet hammer. And you know what the profile style of our, predominant profile style of our guests throughout the United States? The velvet hammer. So when you say that the business reflects it, yes, obviously it does. And so we attract in those who have that same kind of a management style.
I'm glad that you explained it that way, because somehow or the other I felt that, Jim, in my conversation with you, that you believe in, first of all, honesty, giving people something and a true value and quality, and giving it to them in a very, I think, relaxing, nice but not overdone restaurant facility, where people feel that they are truly getting what they expect and what they expect to pay for. And I like your comment because of the difference of this nation and all the other nations in the world has been the, quote, opportunity through the free enterprise system. I always put the word opportunity in there, because free enterprise means nothing without opportunity. And I like your statement. I say, I believe it's the man operating the system who produces the profit.
Absolutely.
And man, system, and profit. Now, of course, a lot of us operate without that profit motive. However, we do, fortunately, enjoy what we do. But, Jim Mather, how would you apply this to Mr. Steak with your basic operation in Denver? And do you have the opportunity to get around to all the Mr. Steak restaurants throughout the entire nation?
Several years ago, Tom, I would say probably as much as 10 years ago, you have a brochure amongst that PR information that you have there that's called Time to Sow. And I consider that the Lord kind of developed a program that really I had very little to do with, that has really become, I think, very close to the word unique, which means one of a kind. And what didn't set out to be this way, but it turns out that I spend about 25% of my time what we call plowing back into the community, which means that we go into the communities, and in some cases not communities where Mr. Steak are, but most generally where we are, same as I'm in Cheyenne today, and we were plowing back into Cheyenne today in a way to say thank you to Dave, his guests in this area, by talking to their children at the high school. Now, maybe they don't appreciate being called children. They're young people. We would talk to 3 different assemblies of probably 250, maybe 300 per assembly, and sharing with them on 3 different subjects. The first one was on free enterprise, the second one on motivation, and the third one on career opportunities in the nation and for them. And we say, now, what do we have to benefit from that? First of all, those young people are not guests of Mr. Steak. They probably don't have the money to be able to afford to eat out. They'll probably be more like McDonald's or Burger King. So we don't have anything to gain there. We're not going to sell them a franchise. The community college class that we just came from and visiting with them, we don't expect to sell a franchise to those people, nor necessarily that they're going to be guests in Mr. Steak. We're sharing back with them. The same thing would be true with your radio show here, as well as the television broadcast we had earlier this morning, the same as the Christian Businessmen's Committee that we'll be speaking to this evening down at the hitching post. Don't expect that there's going to be any remuneration in that whatsoever. Matter of fact, it costs the company for me to take a day out of the work and leave home at 4:30 this morning to get here for this day's activity. And we say, so what do we benefit from that? Well, we think that business people, that we have a responsibility in the community to share back with the community what this free enterprise system is all about. What the businessman has had so much a bad image because everybody says they're profit hungry and all this. And of course, yes, we do need profit. Without profit, we can't be generous. The nation can't be generous without profit to other countries who are the third world countries. We wouldn't have, if we didn't have a surplus of grains, we wouldn't be able to feed the communist nation of Russia and some of the other third world countries. So we shouldn't be ashamed of being a country of producers. So we have been, so now I've been spending for the past 10 years, and you've seen that probably in some of the engagements, so that I think it's about 8 or 9 years that it describes there, of the different activities. About 25% of my time is spent going around the country to different communities, speaking to service clubs, to church groups, to the media, to high schools, to colleges, universities, as well as being on the Board of Trustees of Rockmont College in Denver, and the Board of Advisors to NYU, the New York University, and also on the Board of Advisors at University of Wisconsin Stout. And these are things that do not produce income for your company, but we think these are responsibilities that we in business have. And talking to you, Tom, earlier, I listened to all of the things that you are interested in, and your silent witness program and all the other things that you're so excited about, and not one of those things that I hear you talk about that makes you $1. And yet you evidently believe in the scriptural version that says in Luke 6:38, it says, "Give, and it shall be given to you, pressed down, squeezed together, running over into your bosom, men will give." So with the same measure that you measure out, it'll be measured back to you. Now, I'd have to tell you, for your listening audience sake, that I happen to be a born-again Christian who believes that the Bible is the totally inspired Word of God, and that it is exactly what it says it is, and so I won't argue with it. I would say this, that where that says that the same measure is measured out will be measured back to you, I'd say I think the Lord was conservative there, or the Holy Spirit in inspiring that, because my experience is as you give, the Lord gives back more, like 100 times. Obviously, that shouldn't be our motivation, but my experience is that is the way He operates.
There's one thing in common. Most of the people that I find that are unhappy with life or miserable are the ones who have been takers and not givers. I find that it's very true, whether it's in children. They have been selfish and they have never wanted to have children or support or work with children or to get out and do anything except whatever suits their individual purpose in life. And it seems to me they're cheating themselves out of what life really is, and the way we're only here for a short time, and here we go philosophically. I won't have enough time or enough tape for us to do this whole interview. But Mr. Mather, this business of time to sow, to put back, and I mentioned to you earlier that we'd have very few problems. We'd need very few government regulations if everybody would follow the advice of saying, well, we'll put back more than we take out. We wouldn't need environmental regulations. We wouldn't need a lot of labor regulations or a lot of other things. And from that standpoint, Jim, here we go. As the founder of Mr. Steak, can you tell me how you can give this type of inspiration that the American dream is still alive? I'm so sick of the doom and gloom people that I won't even watch and listen to them anymore because they have a tendency to discourage me when I've had a good day. And I begin to wonder, what right do they have to tell me that I don't have a future, or that my kids don't have a future, or that my friends can't make a future for themselves in what I still think is a great land of opportunity, perhaps the last in the world?
Yes. Well, let me answer that, Tom, by saying, first of all, that I will start on a negative, but I'd like to end on a positive on this, in that I happen to believe that there is a conspiracy. Now, again, maybe some of your listeners won't agree with me. Yes, I believe there's a conspiracy. I believe that the original communist idea that says we will bury you without firing a shot, I believe that's just as true today. And when we wasted all of those years in what we call détente, we were the foolish ones. They're the smart ones. They are using our very system of freedoms to destroy our freedoms. And we, as Americans, are taking it hook, line, and sinker, and have been for years. So, saying that how will they take us without firing a shot? And that is by their own. It's already written. And why we don't believe it, they have already written how they're going to do it. And for some reason, we won't believe it. First of all, they want to take over our seminaries. They want to destroy the value of the Bible, the inerrancy of the Bible. They want to get into our universities and our colleges, our high schools and our grade schools, and the same as they say, you give me enough generations of young minds up to the age 7 and then on up, and let me educate them in this liberal type of thinking, as opposed to the individual worth. Make it a communal worth, an individual worth, rather than the state worth. And looking to government, and going back to the scripture where we say, God said that we're to have no other gods before Him. He's to be number one. That's the number one commandment. Thou shalt have only one God. And so today, people say, I don't worship idols or images. And we say, let's be careful of that. We may be worshiping an idol or image that has, 8 cylinders. Or it may have 12 golf clubs, or it may be a bottle, or it may be sex, or it may be the job, or it may be anything that even is a do-gooder type community activity, which becomes our God. But what we've established, to me, as the real image where, when when Moses went up on the mountain and got the 10 Commandments and brought it down, he was gone for the length of time. In the meantime, they had taken all their gold and made a golden calf, and here they are, ridiculous as it seems in our intellect, bowing down to a golden calf that they made with their own hands. We say that's ridiculous, except you and I worship things that are made by our own hands. Materialism. So we say, today we would think that's ridiculous. We won't bow down, but we have made our Capitol building in Washington, D.C., our golden calf. We have any kind of tragedy or any kind of a need, we rather than pray to God, we pray to Washington. In fact, we don't pray, we demand by statute that they help us in whatever our problem might be. We have gone to the place where we think government is our need and our answer. And the people who really established our country for the greatness that it is, established on the individual worth and the individual self-respect of producing for ourselves. And this is, I think, is what our administration is trying to say. Let's get back to send the money and block grants back to the states, back to the cities, and let them disseminate it, let them work their programs, and let them be responsible how they're worked. And Tom, back where I was reared in El Dorado, Kansas, of course we didn't have food stamps, we didn't have the welfare programs, but out on I believe it was the south side of town, I may be wrong on the directions now, up on a hill was today, if you'd looked at it then, you'd have thought this was a modern, beautiful motel. It was a big ranch, and they had dairy cattle on it, and they had pigs, and they raised corn and wheat and all. And you know what it was called? I don't like the name, what it was called, but it was a poor farm. And Butler County people contributed to making that poor farm. So anybody that had a need in there could live there scot-free. But you know how they lived? They went out and they milked cows, they worked in the fields, and they produced so that they did not, their self-respect was maintained. And when we have it today, where you keep on giving me, and we can do this with our children, I can ruin my children by the giveaway program. Just every time they have a need and their hand goes out and I put their need in the hand, I do not build any self-respect or reliance upon them, or upon themselves. So I think, the good news I wanted to say, Tom, and I get rambling here, is that within about the last 5 years, moving across the country, I can tell you right now, there is a new era that started way beyond Mr. Reagan getting in there, that I see it on the college campuses and on high schools, a new seriousness, a new interest in the self-worth and the getting out and getting things done. There's a new attitude has been developed. Now, what I'm concerned about right now is that there is I think, an organized effort to try to get us back into the 60s kind of mentality, where every time the television comes on, they're going to show some poor people who are having trouble, and it's because they're unemployed, or it's because of some program being cut back, and the media is filling the airways with this, as opposed to what good things are taking place. And I grant that there are people, and when you're unemployed, that's really a problem. And I'm sympathetic with that. But I think we have been so long in this other program that it's going to hurt. And it's hurting in our business, Tom. I have to tell you, in food service, the disposable dollar is not there for people to dine out as often as they used to. And we've been having for the past few years, we've been having a very rough go. We've had some restaurants that have closed across the country. And our profits, we have not been paying dividends for the past 2 or 3 years to our stockholders who put the capital into our business. We've not had it to put it back in. But I'm saying that I'm willing to forego that and to work a little bit harder if we can get the self-respect back into ourselves and into our communities.
Well, on a small basis, I think we've all been faced with it, and the people who I think are in business and understand that we couldn't continue the way we had been going. And that's the other 200 million people of this country who don't get on the CBS News at night and on that type of thing. They'll always pick on that 7 or 8 or 9 million people, and they really overwork them to death, about 50 to 1 over the other 190 to 210 million people who say we cannot continue the direction we have gone the last 25 years and still say that there is anything beyond the next 2 or 3 or 4 years. And I think most of the people of this nation have recognized that. And that's why they're willing to suffer and pull their horns in and reduce their expectations. And Jim Mather, when Mr. Steak started, or even beyond that point, when I was raised there were 3 things I was told that I must do. First of all, when I got some money for my birthday, put some back. You might want to buy some clothes. Or put some back. You might want to go to college someday. Or make sure that you have some money set aside for a rainy day. Then all of a sudden came along a few years later, well, don't worry about saving any money because there'll be a government program to finance your college education. You won't have to save any money for that. And don't worry about having money for a house when you get married because we'll have a government program that you can get in with no money down. Or don't worry about having money for a rainy day because we've got a program for emergency assistance in case you have trouble. And you know something? Every one of those 3 areas, in addition to the government artificially keeping prices down on oil and natural gas, have been primarily responsible for the lack of, number 1, money available to loan to the home building industry. The college fund subsidy now that the kids are finding themselves in because they didn't save their money. And you start going down the line, Jim, and most of the problems we have been self-inflicted on the free ride situation instead of individuals taking care of their own future.
I couldn't agree more. And again, I realize that your listeners aren't necessarily going to all agree with what we're talking about. And as I shared with one of the assemblies this morning at the high school, is that all of us are limited to our experience. And unfortunately, some of us have not had an opportunity to travel in some of these other countries and see some of the other systems to be able to appreciate the system under which we operate today and how beautiful it is. Thomas, let me just interrupt myself and tell you that any of your staff members that may be waiting, why don't you tell them to come on back and they can sit back here and maybe they can listen to part of this interview. And we can be sharing with them as we're going along because I think it's relative to them also. One of the things that is bothering me right now, and has for a long time, I'd have to tell you, first of all, I'm anti-United Nations. And if we had time here, I would share with your audience as to why I'm anti-United Nations. And I can give them facts and figures as to why it has not helped but harmed not just our country but our world, and favored communism. Secondly, I'm against the central bank. The central bank, which established many, many years ago in Europe, which our forefathers warned us not to get involved in, and that President Lincoln kicked out, was finally instituted by the European bankers here in our country, and today is called our Federal Reserve. And so here we have, and as I have visited with on college and university campuses around the country and in political science classes as well as the economic classes, asking them, what do you know about the Federal Reserve and who owns the Federal Reserve? And obviously most people say, well, it's a federal agency. And I say, that's very interesting. What federal body controls this federal agency? And has it ever been audited as to who owns it and what are the assets to it? And the fact is that there's been a bill in Congress every year to audit the Federal Reserve. And never has the Federal Reserve ever been audited. So we don't know who owns it. We know the federal government doesn't. We think it's about 50% owned by the federal government and 50% owned by the bankers of the United States. And we say, who controls it? Who makes the decisions on what are the interest payments that are being paid by the American people? And we say, well, it's the member banks around it and the people they appoint as to who's on the board. And in most cases, they're bankers or mortgage people. Well, I would call that a conflict of interest, Tom, when I am establishing that which you have to pay me, and by edict, that is it. So the banks today have to go along with the Federal Reserve, and so here we have a free enterprise community in the United States. It's called free enterprise, but the economy is controlled by a minority called the Federal Reserve. And so it's an artificial reserve. It's based upon man's intellect of whether or not I think we're going to slow down the rate of inflation. We're going to use this mechanism based upon the M1 or the M2, based upon the supply of dollars, as to whether or not the interest rate's going to be 18%, whether it's going to be 22%. And these young people that have just moved up into the booths in the Mr. Steak restaurant here, because we're getting ready to visit with them in a little while, these young people in most cases are not married, and they're probably wondering right now, am I going to be able, my husband and my wife, are we going to be able to afford to buy a home and own a home like my parents have owned? And right now they have to say, boy, I don't know how they're going to do it without two incomes, and even with the two incomes, to be able to qualify for a loan at interest rates today. The prime rate today is what, about 16.5 or 17%? And so if you try to go to a bank and you try to borrow money, they're going to tack on at least 2% on that. Or if you want to borrow money from the FHA or one of the other agencies, they're going to, if the prime rate is at 16.5%, they're probably going to be paying 17%. They can't afford. You can't qualify. The average person can't qualify to buy a home. So what does that do? By using the Federal Reserve and the prime rate to try to control the rate of inflation, it's bound to hit specific industries harder than some other industries. So that becomes unfair. The construction industry is hurt. The farming industry is hurt.
Okay. All right, let's see here. Okay. Go to the next side.
Hurt those who supply the construction industry, such as the lumber, the furniture, the carpeting, all of those various industries, electricians, and all of them.
This is side 2 now. Side 2.
All affected by this. And so it's difficult. The automobile business is the same way in trying to finance automobiles. And so we have major industries. And see, I consider, Tom, that these are not accidental decisions. These are planned decisions. And during the Carter administration, I happened to read in one of the books of the number 2 man in that administration, and his book Between the Ages, where he says the American system is archaic, and the sooner we're a one-world government, the better off we'll be. And so he says that sovereignty is old-fashioned. That means that we should not feel good and proud about being Americans. We should think in terms that we're world citizens. Well, we have to first of all be proud and produce here before we can be good world citizens, because we have to produce more wheat and corn to be able to share with other nations. Because if I am destitute, Tom, I am not in a position of being able to help you if you're destitute also, right? The only one that can help somebody that's destitute, other than praying for them, would be somebody that has grain. And everything is going back on. Thank you. I just got a hot cup of coffee here. Thank you for the coffee and the thought here of unless we're producing, we can't be generous to other countries.
Mr. Bader, you've given a good description of something that we've discussed here in Cheyenne that has been a major concern of a lot of us for a long time. Unfortunately, I think that there's been some areas that have not been presented properly, but the concern, as you pointed out, of the Trilateral Commission is what we're really basically looking at here. Has been the concern of a lot of thinking people for a long time, but is it so big that we as common, ordinary individuals, whether you're the president and founder of a large chain of restaurants or me with a small radio station, and a lot of individuals who just go to work every day for a living, but we all have this major concern because world events are tied to this. Whether an area is going to become a trouble spot or it's going to work itself out has a lot to do. And you start throwing out some of the powerful names of the industrial world, the moneyed people of the world, who can call some of the shots. is this, quote, world order? I always think of a world order as if everybody could be a good Christian or something like that. Yeah. But you're looking at a different world order where money rules instead of the supreme being.
Yes, it's really called power. And we can see this. I've talked to our Senator Bill Armstrong and former Congressman John Conlon and most every one of the senators and congressmen and those that I've met back in Washington. As a matter of fact, even in talking to President Reagan before he became president, my wife and I had the privilege of being invited to his home for dinner a year before the election out in Beverly Hills. And they say that once you get into Washington, you can go in there with the best intentions whatsoever, be a completely truthful individual, really going in to produce the correct things for our country, intending maybe only to spend 2 years or 4 years there and do the job. But they say that there's what they call a Potomac fever that takes place, that once you're there, you do almost anything to remain there. But going back to the term Trilateral Commission that you mentioned here, that we had talked briefly about off the air, maybe some of your listeners are not aware of what that is. It's a fairly new organization that was started in 1973, and prior to that, several years prior to that, was an organization called the Council for National Policy that was started back in the early part of this century. It's interesting that it's made up of many of the same kind of people, and their objectives are in many cases the same. The Council on Foreign Relations is made up of all Americans, and they had a kind of a world vision. The Trilateral Commission, according to everything that I've read that are documented on it from them themselves, was started in 1973 and was founded and funded by Nelson Rockefeller. And incidentally, he's the chairman of it. And the chairman also of the Council on Foreign Relations is Nelson Rockefeller. And so you say that if you would have taken a look at the chart that I had of the past administration to see who all was on board, either the Council on Foreign Relations or the Trilateral Commission, you'd have found every one of the cabinet members and many of the main appointees and much of the head of media and education were on those committees. And the American people knew very little about it. Starting back, again, about 8 or 9 years ago, when I would ask on college campuses and economic classes and political science classes, is what do you know about the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations? Are they government agencies? Not in every case. They were very strange, and even the professors were not aware of them. They thought they'd heard of them before, and they sound like they'd be government agencies. And of course, they're not government agencies. They're privately funded and operated, but they're the true most powerful organizations in the world. And the Trilateral Commission is made up of 1/3 Americans and 1/3 Japanese and 1/3 European people. And their concern is world concerns. And it sounds very good, and I consider the word insidious, because if you read about it, you'd think, well, they're out for world good, you know. And when I say insidious, I mean that which we do, which sounds so good, which is like welfare. If it steals self-respect, it's not good. So the Trilateral Commission, the idea is that we give up our sovereignty, that we try to come down and we be equal with all other countries. That's the way socialism is. And really, I believe that these two organizations are using communism rather than communism using them.
Touch on a couple of things that I've had a close contact with. Number one, the absolute desecration of what I thought was a very honest and a very good thing called the Monroe Doctrine. The second area, and that's almost been thrown completely out the window at this particular point, which is really too bad, because we had it and we set the precedents for it many, many times. The giveaway of Panama and the Panama Canal area and the staging area, the only real solid foothold we had in Central and South America, is going to come to haunt us many, many times, I'm afraid. The aspect that maybe we're coming to the point where if Russia can invade Afghanistan to preserve their southern flank, then and maybe it's time we look at Cuba in the same light to preserve our southern flank. I don't want to throw a lot of ideas out at you, but there are some thoughts I think people are starting to get now that maybe we haven't been as smart as we've been telling the rest of the world that we really are, or that we haven't exerted ourselves in the areas where it really counts. What would you do to get back to your comment about the Federal Reserve? Because, you know, the administration has told us that they would do what they have done. If you'd asked this question a year ago, and Jim, think about this. If I'd have come up a year ago and said to you, what is the most insidious problem that we have in the United States as it affects the economy, you would have told me inflation.
Right.
All right? 0.2%. That's right. As it affects, that's not our most insidious problem, but as far as the economy is concerned. And a year ago and 2 years ago, you would have said the runaway inflation that this nation is undergoing. You can't say that today. But yet, high interest rates are our biggest problem, are they not, Jim?
Yes.
What is the answer to the Federal Reserve and the interest rate question?
Well, I don't have the credentials to be any expert in this. I'm only, as a businessman, expressing my opinion and point of view.
You've thought about it, though.
Yes, I have, and I say I don't believe that you can operate a free enterprise system with a controlled economy. The two are incongruous. You cannot have the controls. I would say let things float based upon the supply and demand. I'm saying right now that if Dave Stroud here in Cheyenne, if he operates a dirty restaurant, he does not keep an exciting staff, and they do not prepare food the way people order it, then pretty soon people are going to leave this restaurant and go down the street to another one. And pretty soon Dave is going to start recognizing that he has the symptoms of a very deadly disease in our industry, and it's called paralysis of the cash register. When that cash register stops ringing, then pretty soon the staff members are no longer employed, and then they're back out looking for jobs, and has a real problem, and he's lost his investment and his investor's investment. So maybe Dave starts seeing the symptoms of that, and he's saying, I wonder what's wrong. So he decides that some luncheon he'll drive down the street to find out where are the guests that used to be here. So he drives down the street and he sees this other restaurant. He drives in. The parking lot is clean, has a nice sign on it. The outside of the building is good. He walks in and there's a waitress or a hostess that greets him with a smile, and it's a clean restaurant, and he walks in and they seat him immediately. Even though the restaurant has been busy, he walks into the restaurant, he has to walk by many of his former guests, and it's a little embarrassing for him and for his former guests. But he sits down and he looks at a clean table with clean silverware, and he looks at a menu that has some exciting new things on it, and a restaurant that's been some live plants have been brought in, and some exciting colors and all, and he sees the prices on the menu are maybe even more in line than his, and the service is sharp and is fast, and he walks out and they thank him for coming to the restaurant. He goes on out and he says, hey boy, I better go back and take a look at my restaurant. He walks back in his restaurant, and maybe he all of a sudden sees that his parking lot is dirty, maybe the inside of the restaurant is not as clean as his, maybe my staff is not as sharp as they are, maybe they're kind of lackadaisical, maybe the menu is the same as it's been for years, maybe the price is not competitive, and so he says, hey gang, we're going to have a meeting. And so he gets his staff together and he starts a retraining program. He brings in some new plants, and he puts in some new equipment in the restaurant. He livens the place up, and they start getting some exciting promotions. They get their prices in line. Then he starts advertising. If he advertised with you before that, Tom, he would be advertising a dirty restaurant that had bad food, and so he'd be advertising a bad thing. So
we
now
can advertise anything.
Oh yes, I know, but he'd be wasting his advertising dollars because they'd come in and be disappointed. So now he gets a restaurant cleaned up as it is right now, as it always is. And incidentally, in his case, he came in here was it 8 or 9 years ago that you came in here, Dave? And this restaurant had been mismanaged. It had gotten to that state that I was telling you about. So Dave had to spend probably the first year changing the reputation of this restaurant to now it's one of the higher volume of the chain that he's involved in. And you say, why? And it's because it's a man operating a system that produces a profit. So now that cash register starts going back up, and some of his guests by word of mouth start coming back, and new people start coming back, and that other restaurant down there starts noticing the people are not in there as the way they, so he starts looking around at what am I doing, and so he has to upgrade his restaurant. So we say, who is the beneficiary of all of this upgrading, the better menu, the better service, and all? And it's the guest. That's the beauty of the free enterprise system. And so we say, this is the heart and breadth of our business here. That's the heart and breadth of free enterprise. The competitive system produces the best results for the American consumer. And that's why we have a country that we have such plenty, but these young folks that are sitting here, unless they've traveled abroad, have nothing to compare it to. We're like the kids of a rich family who've inherited the wealth of our parents and never earned any of it. Maybe we've been given a car rather than earning the money to buy a car. And we don't have the same respect for it. The dollars we've earned, we respect those. The cups that are sitting in front of us and the glasses, now all of a sudden if we've ever bought them, we know now what it costs. And we have a different value for them. We have a different value for the silverware if we've ever bought any, so we're careful we don't throw them in the trash when we pick up the refuse and the paper and the napkins on the table. But Dave, I'm sure, has found, in some time past, he's probably found silverware in the trash. That's somebody that has never bought silverware who would be so careless as not to throw it away. So we say the competitive free enterprise system that we have here, yes, it has fallacies in it. But I'm telling you right now, of traveling around the world, there's no system and there's no country that has produced the system that we have here and the plenty that we have here, and it's through our plenty that we're able to help other countries. And that's where I believe that Jesus talked about a lot of people say, well, Jesus was a liberal too. No, yes, I believe he was a liberal in one sense. He was liberal with everything he had. He was not liberal with what you had. And the difference is, I think he was a conservative person. He believed in conserving everything. I do too. Conservation, I think, is important. But I think it's called robbery when we take away from others to give to others who maybe we don't even agree with. And so he says, you give out of your abundance. Conserve what you have in this nation or in this country, in the world. But out of your abundance, you give and share with others. But then, Tom, don't tell me that I have to give to what your program is over here, or for you, or for your other things that maybe I don't even agree with. I shouldn't be taxing by statute or by law somebody else to support a program that I don't agree with. I don't agree with abortion. I think it's murder. And for you to take my tax dollars to abort babies and murder babies that I think our country is going to be judged by someday, I say that's criminal. I shouldn't have to support that. I shouldn't have to support programs that I don't agree with. But under this kind of system, but still, I say, our system is the best system that's ever been developed, because at least we have a choice. You young people that are sitting here, you have a choice to be in here. In Russia, you don't have a choice. They'll tell you whether you're going to be an engineer, a farmer, whether you're going to be a pharmacist, or whatever it might be. It is not by your choice. And also, you will be working for the government, and you'll be using tools that are owned by the government, not your own tools. Dave has the opportunity here expanding because he's using his capital, his tools, and you're here because you want to be here, not because you have to be here.
They're trying a whole new social experiment in China and Russia right now. It's called capitalism. It's very interesting how they're starting to get into that now.
Yes.
I would also say that Mr. Steak and the conversations that I've had, and really this restaurant in Cheyenne has been everything that you just said it was. And Dave, I don't know who to say has been responsible, but I can tell you this, that the plants are alive and well,
yes,
and the staff is exciting. Are you not exciting? All right, so you got an exciting staff, live plants, and a clean and quality place. And again, I think we started out at the very beginning as the founder of Mr. Steak, that you are going to have ups and downs. There's no question about it. That's human nature. But at the same time, I believe that your product, your restaurant, and everything has certainly embodied the conversations we've had today. Now, if we can just get you out of this shyness and let you start talking more about the courage of your convictions, Jim Mather, that's the only thing I can see that we might have to work on, sir.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity, Tom, of sharing some of my prejudice with your listening audience, and I hope it hasn't been too abusive to them. I would always enjoy being able to have a situation where, as like you would have on a call-in show, where they could call in and object to some of the things you say, and maybe give me an opportunity to prove with some statistics and facts some of the things that I've experienced that brings me to the place of where I have the convictions that I have today.
I have always felt that was kind of like music to my ears, because we're both sitting in the same choir.
Yes.
And I thank you very much, Jim. And if the Lord ever had a Last Supper, I'll bet it would be at a Mr. Steak, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate that. That's very kind.
All right, one down. That was the first one of many in this tape box that Kerri Marquadt sent. Okay. Okay. So that was Tom Bauman interviewing Jim Mather, Grandpa Mather, side 2. We did side 1 and 2. KRAE Radio Cheyenne, Tuesday, 23 March 1982. And I guess they were in the Mr. Steak. The note on the tape case says Cheyenne number 297. This was one of our stores out of over 7 over the years. That's what Kerri, who sent me these, said. This recording was made on 1 August 2026 at approximately finishing 1:45 p.m. Saturday.